So, bike's back in the garage. It survived its first day of hell. It's about 2 AM now, so a bit tired. And sort all the videos out. We've got about 13 hours worth of video footage to now go through. So, give you all an update and let you know where we're at with it. The first 3 hours of the dyno session didn't go as planned, weren't a waste of time, but basically what was happening is the first 3 hours on the dyno, we were getting loads of fuel injection warning lights, we were getting engine management issues, fuel pump wasn't working, the battery was doing some really weird things, so it was acting like it had no charge, which then wasn't giving enough power to run the fuel pump. And we thought this might have been an issue, so we put the booster pack on and ran it again, but it would sporadically create voltage and not create voltage. And after 3 hours of messing about and fault finding and things with it, it turned out that, I can get the boot lid open, the map sensor, which is there, back of the plenum, comes up, and Dynojet gave me a wiring diagram of what terminals to wire this to on the Power Commander 5, 5-volt feed for it, and they gave me all the wrong information. So what was happening was I was putting 5 volts into the ground on the Power Commander, which was throwing all sorts of problems up with the bike. So thank you for that, Dynojet. Certainly won't be doing anything that they tell me to do ever again, and I'll just be working it all out myself. Once we'd fixed this issue, the next issue we had in the first 3 hours was the original map sensor, which on this bike is wired in down there. Now, the original map sensors can't take boost or positive pressure, it just screws them. So what you have to do is put a check valve, one-way valve, whatever you in, so that it can see the vacuum but not see the pressure. And I'd valved these up wrong, so that was an easy one to rectify, which we've done there. So that's now working, sorted. And then it was back to, now we aren't getting limp mode, not getting fueling issues because of it. The fuel pump's now running continuously. We can take the battery pack back off and it works. So that was the issues we had first sort of 3 hours on the dyno. Started to get a good base map in for tuning it without boost. The second part of the dyno time on this, the afternoon, started getting some good power. The most power we recorded was 143. We recorded that about 5 or 6 times consistently. The issue we then discovered was, and you'll see that in the footage, is the exhaust nuts on the studs, which don't know if you can see them in this light. Up in there, that stud up in there. Now that manifold flange holds all the manifold pipes against the block. Every single one of those nuts in there holding that on. As we were running it up on the dyno, every time you could see the nuts just rotating and undoing themselves and falling off of it. And it was every time we tried to do a power run. So the issue we were having was we couldn't get more than about 2 or 3 psi of boost, and we couldn't do it consistently because we were losing a lot of the exhaust pressures, the gas pressure in the exhaust system before the turbo. We were losing out the manifold at different points, so we were struggling to then map it, and we tried all sorts to keep them nuts tight, and they just vibrated off. We're now working on an alternative to keep them on. We're going to tweak the design on the manifold slightly as well, so there'll be another video before the next set of dynos runs. The boost we did get, we were getting about 10 to 12 psi. We were getting it at about 9,300 rpm up to the red line at about 12,000 rpm, and it was doing that in 1 second. Just over 1 second it was making that boost, and it was going from about 70 horsepower skyrocketing up to 140 to 143 horsepower. At that point we stopped any more dyno work because it was pointless, because we were losing gas pressure basically. So the plan now is we're going to fix the manifold on it, make sure we're getting more gas pressure, more pressure basically inside, so we're getting constant pressure on here. Now this TDO4 should be spooling up somewhere around 5,500 rpm once we're not losing gas pressure out here. So that was the first issue we discovered in the afternoon, and stupid issue to have, but it was an issue. It's easy to rectify, but got to bring it home to do it. Once we've done that, we know we can actually get the turbo to spool up fast enough and early enough, because all the energy in the exhaust gases aren't being wasted by just falling out the manifold down there. They're going to actually go through the turbo and make the turbo work. The other issue we had in the afternoon was we've got a 5 psi wastegate on it, and the plan was we were going to run a 5 psi, a 7 psi, and maybe a 14 psi, and incrementally raise it, because we were losing exhaust pressure down there, and because this is a little bit weak, what it was doing was it was just dropping the wastegate open ever so slightly as well, pretty much from about 4,000 rpm, which was then losing pressure as well. So it wasn't until it could overcome that pressure loss through the wastegate and the pressure loss through the manifold, and the engine was moving enough gas or air through it, that it would spool the turbo up hard enough to make boost as well. So for the next one, we're going to go straight on at the 7 psi wastegate. We're going to set it up so there's a little bit more tension pulling on the wastegate, and I'm also going to just have a look inside and see what's going on with the wastegate as well. Might machine it out slightly and bore it out so it's a little bit better and smoother and flatter finish, but again we'll see what's going on inside there before we do anything. So the next dyno run, which should be in about a month's time, basically we'll have the exhaust gases working, and we'll have a stronger actuator on it. Apart from that, everything else worked on the bike. None of the fuel tanks leaked. We did have one leak, which was from the oil return from the turbo. Now last week before we did it, I put a new clutch in this with much stronger clutch springs just to give it a good chance, and when we got the dyno, I hadn't quite nipped these up. I like to nip things up, and if the leak, nip them a bit more, and if the leak, nip them a bit more, rather than just go flat out on it and get it as tight as you can. Just so you don't over tighten it, just tighten it and make sure it works. So that's now stopped leaking. That was the only leak I had in the whole day. Fuel tanks worked. It did really well. Coolant temperatures, or air temperatures, it was about 22 degrees outside when we started doing dyno ones in the afternoon, and we're getting a little bit of boost. The temperature inside the plenum was 33 degrees, so there was 10 degrees difference. That's in quite a little dyno room. It's got a big fan in front of it, but there's not a lot of air, fresh air flowing around the thing. So I was quite impressed at the fact that we were only getting 10 degrees more on it. We were also running it on standard 95 octane pump gas, or petrol as you would call it in the UK. We're not planning on running higher octane unless we start getting lots of pinking and detonation and things, but we're not pushing it to that sort of limit anyway, hopefully. So I hope you've sort of kind of enjoyed doing all of this, or watching all of this. Well, I've done it all, and we will be coming back. We will be doing another video on this between now and the next dyno, and we'll be doing the next dyno session, which will be it making boost. The one thing I will be doing before it goes back to the dyno again next time is I'll be making sure that it's making good boost this time. So I'm going to take the blow off valve off and make sure that it's creating a good strong pressure in there. I could ride it now if I wanted to, as long as I kept it off boost. The map on it now is set quite good for no boost. So when we go back to the dyno as well, all we then have to do is pretty much check that map and then concentrate on putting boost in incrementally, and then seeing if we can control that boost level at wherever we end up with it. So thank you for watching, everybody, and hopefully I'll keep you informed in the next few weeks as to what happens. The other thing on the footage is you'll notice we had a pipe onto the exhaust pipe on this bike that came out the side. The reason we did that is because when you tune, you put a Lambda sensor up the exhaust to find out what the gases are doing, how lean and rich it's running, how good the burn are and things. The problem we had is the Lambda that we use on the dyno is on a long rod and it wouldn't fit up because there's too many turns and kinks in here, and I haven't got a fitment on here anywhere just to bolt the Lambda sensor directly into it. So what we decided to do was fit a pipe onto there that had a fitment onto it and then run that into the exhaust extractor. So that big pipe mechanism that you saw on the video, that was why that was put on there, was just so we can measure the exhaust gases. When we go back for the next session, somewhere in here we're going to weld in a little fitting so we can bolt the Lambda straight into it as well. And that's what all that pipe fitment was. One of the videos, it came loose, we had it on a clamp on there, it came loose, fell off. I absolutely crapped myself because I thought the engine had let go, to everybody's amusement, but that's what the piece on the side was for as well.